Hello and welcome to EB5 Investment Reports Dialogue Series. I'm Amy Rios. Today's speaker is Bernard Wolfsdorf, Certified Specialist on Immigration and Nationality Law with extensive knowledge and expertise with the EB5 program. Today, Bernie will be discussing some hot topics in the EB5 world and what SEC's new rules might mean for regional centers. But before we begin, a word from our sponsor.
The following presentation was made possible by the Alltech Media Group, a Southern California multimedia company providing exponential branding and marketing services to all their clients. The Alltech Media Group understands the value of the 3W strategy, providing their clients proven, trackable results. Let us make it easy for you to grow your business. Visit alltechmedia.com.
Welcome to the show, Bernie. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Amy, it's an absolute pleasure to be with you.
Why don't you tell us about your law firm and why and when you got involved with the EB5 program, and also who some of your clients are?
Well, Amy, as you can hear, I have an accent, so I've been through the process myself, although I wasn't an EB5 investor, but I've been practicing now for over 25 years. We have a firm with our main offices in Santa Monica. We have an office in New York with 19 attorneys and about 60 employees. About half of us are actively involved in EB5 on a day-to-day basis, and I must say it's one of the most exciting and challenging areas in immigration practice today.
How did you get involved with EB5?
Well, I did my first EB5 case in 1993.
Wow.
People forget that this program is well over 20 years old. It came out in Immigration Act of 1990. And gosh, I filed my first case. It was approved in 48 hours, which is,
wow,
it was a troubled business, but it was wonderful in those days. But the program's gone through its ups and downs, and pretty much from 96, 97 on through 2003, it was relatively dormant, and it's taken on a new life. It's absolutely buzzing at this time, and this provides a valuable avenue for high net worth people to immigrate where there are no other avenues available for them. So it's really an excellent program, and provides wonderful opportunities both for developers in terms of raising capital, and of course for immigrants who want to live the American dream.
Now, there's 350 plus regional centers, and that's grown quite a bit over the past couple of years. And then recently, a few months ago, the SEC announced the elimination on the ban against general solicitation for Reg D offerings. Can you explain what that means and what kind of impact that will have on regional centers and the program as a whole?
Yeah. The SEC has, without a doubt, shown a lot more interest in this program. They want to ensure the integrity of the program. There have been one or two high-profile, let's call it failures, which have got everybody's attention, and certainly at the end of the day have actually, in my opinion, benefited the program, because bad actors have received a warning that you better be careful, the SEC is watching. And number two, those individuals who are victims of the one or two bad projects, they've been able to get their money back and reinvest. So kind of all somewhat of a happy ending. Now, we pretty much all understand what is the role of the SEC. We're looking at two fundamental issues. Number one, adequate disclosure, making sure that everyone tells the truth. And number two, of course, preventing fraud. Now, the Jobs Act, more accurately described as the Jumpstart Our Business Startup Act of April 5, 2012. It's taken some time to actually publish the regulations. The SEC final rules were adopted on July 10, 2013, and they become effective September 23, 2013. So nobody is actually exactly clear what's going to happen until we have implementation. But the simple bottom line is that while it does lift the ban on general solicitation or general advertising, that is only in the instance of purchasers who are in fact accredited investors. And one of the new requirements is that it is now necessary to take reasonable steps to ensure that the purchasers are in fact accredited. And there are specific methods that are laid out right now in terms of making sure that the investors are accredited and meet certain standards. And that's actually put some additional requirements, I'm not sure I use the word burdens, on issuers. So it's not exactly open fishing. What we have right now is a very well thought out framework, but as I say, there are additional reasonable steps to verify the nature of the purchaser, the type of accredited investor that the purchaser claims to be. It's no longer just filling out the form. They actually have to solicit specific information. And by the way, there's a non-exhaustive list of the processes that would constitute reasonable steps. That includes the income method, the net worth method, the third-party verification. So I don't think all issuers are sort of jumping up with excitement, particularly because there are additional requirements, and that is the filing of Form D, which must be filed 15 days before the offering, not after the first sale, and the amended Form D has to be filed 30 days after the closing. There are penalties for not filing Form D. So there are basically new requirements we didn't have before, which is the requirement to actually file materials with the SEC. I think what this big change does, what it gives with the left hand, it pretty much takes away with the right hand, and I'm not exactly sure this is going to be open fishing for issuers. I'm going to caution issuers to be very careful and remember the overall framework, which is SEC wants to see disclosure, and the SEC wants to make sure that that fraud is prevented. So I think it's a positive move forward, but let's call it baby steps for now.
Okay. Now let's move on to something a little more exciting, and the program is ever evolving. China is a huge market, but now we're seeing some other markets open up. What are some of these other markets that you've seen open up, and how will this impact China and the EB5 program?
Well, the good news is that there's a lot of wealth being created in certain countries, and many of these successful business people want to educate their kids in the United States. I think without a doubt we have the best schools, and this is what's driving the program to a large degree. So what we see is, for example, Brazil is coming up. In South America we have Brazil, we see Venezuela, increased popularity. They're describing Vietnam as the new China.
Wow.
Vietnam definitely coming up in terms of popularity. The Middle East, unfortunately, we have some considerable turmoil, and folks coming out of Syria, coming out of Egypt. Dubai is another sort of central point in terms of potential investors and a hotspot, as it were, for issuers and for projects to in fact market their product.
Do you think we're going to see a market as big as China, or is China pretty much dominating?
China is without a doubt dominating. The level of familiarity with the program in China is amazing. You can hardly. I just came back from China. I'm traveling again. EB5 is sort of the flavor of the week, and everybody's asking you about EB5. So the agents who are out there, and some of them get a bad rap. I'm not sure that's always deserved, but they are out there educating the market, creating opportunities for issuers. And right now, there's actually a lot of product. There's a lot of projects out there, and the Chinese market has become extremely sophisticated in terms of evaluating risk factors, doing due diligence on the project, both as to immigration due diligence and, of course, the fundamental question, am I going to get my money back, which is what folks want to know.
Now, going back to the SEC, we have a question from one of our viewers who wants to know, how will the SEC's role in EB5 affect investors?
Well, let's put it this way. SEC has always been there. And I think that if you are an issuer, if you are running a project and you are not following these rules in terms of determining that your prospective investor is an accredited investor, beware. There are now, as I say, additional steps that need to be taken. The statement, oh, well, I'm a high net worth individual, and they fill out the form, that may not be sufficient, because the requirement now is that you actually need to take some additional reasonable steps in order to verify that that is a sophisticated investor. So I'm going to say an additional layer of caution is going to be required. At the end of the day, I think that this is good for the program. I think that it gives the program integrity.
Now, here in the U.S., we've got thousands of Chinese students attending our universities, like you mentioned. What role can EB5 play in the students and their families achieving the American dream?
Well, the numbers are staggering. 230,000 Chinese students in America. Many of them graduate. Many of them are going to want to stay. And quite frankly, even before they come to the United States, there are major advantages of having a green card, one of which is that many of the permanent residents are going to qualify for in-state tuition. Now, the difference between in-state tuition and out-of-state tuition for UCLA, for example, you're looking at savings of $30,000, $40,000 a year, amounting to hundreds of thousands. So quite frankly, for a Chinese investor, if the kid's going to go to a public school, at the end of the day, they're getting something like $150,000, $200,000 discount off the $500,000 investment, and that is a big driver, a major driver of the program.
Now, from your perspective, what types of EB5 projects are working in what market, and why do you think that they are successful?
Well, there's many different types of projects at work. The focus, of course, has to be job creation. People talk about this as an investor program, but I always want to bring people back and remind them that the fundamental focus here is not so much the U.S. desire to attract capital, which, yes, we need, that is without a doubt, but is the job creation factor. My feeling is that USCIS has its eye on the job creation issues. Now, as a practical matter, certain types of projects, for example, hotel projects, and for example, assisted living, are very, very good. There's a regional center right here where you're recruiting, and I'll give a little shout out for El Rattan and USA Continental Regional Center. They have their latest assisted living project, and I will do full disclosure, I'm the attorney working on these cases, but I've kicked the tires on this, and the job creation is good, and I'm not formally allowed to endorse projects because I'm just the the immigration lawyer, but this is a winner. This is a real winner, and not only creating jobs in your very same Riverside County, in your backyard, but bringing much needed capital, and we are actually seeing somewhat of a turnaround here in Riverside. We're seeing an improvement, and the numerous projects here have undoubtedly made their fair share of contribution.
Yeah, we have a lot of regional centers here too. We do have another question from one of our viewers who wants to know, should a regional center consider be represented by a licensed securities broker-dealer?
Well, that is without a doubt a requirement. The simple bottom line is that you do need to have a FINRA registration in order to be able to provide advice. That's why I've sort of hedged around it. I'm only a certified specialist in immigration law. I do not have the appropriate registration to provide advice as to projects. So I do provide immigration advice on critical issues, but when it comes to financial advice, at that point you really have to have a registered FINRA specialist, and I'm going to go one step further, one who has familiarity with this program, because this is a very complicated program.
Now, can you explain what the term capital raise means in regard to the EB5 program?
Well, at the end of the day, from a developer's perspective, the question is, can they go out and raise capital to do this project? That is a simple bottom line. So we are seeing, for example, increased, I've just been working on a project. I filed several cases where the capital raise is $200 million. And so you're talking about 400 investors. And what we are seeing is many projects getting bigger and bigger and bigger in terms of the capital raise. That actually works for a lot of the agents, for example. Many of the agents only want to pick the bigger projects. Now, there are pluses and minuses in terms of the bigger projects. Sometimes the bigger projects are going to work for some people. Sometimes the smaller, medium-sized projects, for example, the assisted living project that I was talking about for USA Continental Regional Center, that particular project is, in my opinion, just the right size. A $35 million capital raise, for example, with 70 investors, not too big and not too small. I sound like Goldilocks here, where we don't want them too big and we don't want them too small. We want them just the right size. And quite frankly, that type of capital raise works fairly well in the program in terms of the lead time for job creation, in terms of being able to market the project. It's a good fit at 35. But again, some of the big ones, 100, 200 million, are working and active, and we're really at a critical point in the program with so many new regional centers, so many new projects coming in. 2004, 2005, there was something like 6 active regional centers. So it's just mushroomed. It's amazing.
Now, what types of projects are not working?
Well, this is a tough one. Firstly, the biggest problem that we faced is the tenant occupancy headache. So those projects that were focused primarily on tenant occupancy that did not have approvals, and the government has kind of arbitrarily decided that, well, if you had a 526 immigrant approval and you had a tenant occupancy issue, then okay, we're going to grandfather you in and approve it. But if you didn't have approvals, well, then sorry, you're out of luck. So what are we talking about? We're talking about shopping centers. Quite frankly, we're talking about almost half of the regional center projects that were pending around January 2012. 2012 was a bad year for projects that had a tenant occupancy focus. Now, of course, we're seeing a move in towards hotel tenant occupancy, of course, where you're counting the jobs created by your tenants. And even though the government said, well, there's exceptions where we would allow it, the reality is they have been incredibly restrictive in the adjudication. So those are the projects that ran into some snags. In terms of marketing, there's two types of snags that you can deal with. On the one hand, you have the adjudications issues where cases were held up in adjudications, and anecdote and probably fact has it, there's about 6,000 cases stuck at the California Service Center with incredible backlogs, primarily because of this particular issue. And then there's the other issue of, well, how do you market these projects in China? The Chinese market is sophisticated, and they want to see collateral. They want to know, where am I in the capital stack? Am I going to get my money back, or am I sitting behind huge bank debt? The investor is very sophisticated. They want to know how much skin in the game does the developer have? How much of their own money are they putting in? So the market has matured, asking sophisticated questions, doing due diligence in terms of the investment, using registered financial analysts. I see some of the brokers now hiring Stanford MBAs to do analysis on the project. So we're seeing a lot of positive developments in terms of the maturity of the program, and a lot of clarity moving forward in terms of what does the market want, what's going to work. And I do have to mention the May 30th memo, because the May 30th memo really is a turning point. It doesn't answer all the questions, but this is a USCIS attempt to resolve many of the issues, provide clarity in adjudication. And I'm this eternal optimist. I think it's going to get a lot better in the next year in terms of adjudications and processing.
We'll have to have you back on the program to see if you're right.
I'd be delighted.
Now let's talk. We were talking about some. I was wanting to know about some failed projects, and the Chicago case, for example. I understand that you represent some of the investors, the children who aged out of that project. Now, what are you doing for them, and
Well,
are they going to be deported?
I'd like to clarify by pointing out that I didn't file any of those cases initially.
Yes.
You know, the simple bottom line is the Chicago project was just a plain downright dirty fraud. And that initially got a lot of adverse publicity, particularly in China. I was in China at the time. It was a media frenzy. And there's two takeaways from the Chicago project. Number one, it shows how the SEC was working and did work. Everybody got their money back.
Yeah.
So they got their $500,000 back, number one. And number two, there was a warning to bad actors. If you want to try this kind of stunt, don't mess with the SEC.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, I'm the one who sees a silver lining in every cloud. And there definitely is one with the Chicago project. But there's one issue which I'm battling, and it's almost a shout out for if there are other cases, is because of the rules, all of those cases were pending at the 526 stage, and the current rule seems to indicate that you cannot make a material change between the filing of the petition and the adjudication of the petition, which is what we need to do. And what I have done on several cases is the people got their money back. They have put it into a new, in my opinion, clean investment. And I have tried to amend the 526 to give these folks a chance to save the children. Now, the Child Status Protection Act, we need another 2 hours for that. But in a nutshell, if you file prior to the child's 21st birthday, that child is protected. But if you have to pull the petition out and file a new one, you lose the kid. And that just seems wrong in a situation where there was complete fraud. So I'm hoping that USCIS will make an exception. The Adjudication Center is down here in the California Service Center. So guys, if you're watching, please consider this. I think you have a lot of listeners from the California Service Center. This would be an appropriate opportunity to and that would be guys and ladies, because it's the director and the deputy director of the California Service Center are both women. So I'm going to have to appeal to them to cut some slack for the kids and allow them to substitute a new good project where there was fraud, and that's what happened in that horrible situation.
Now, we do have another question from one of our viewers. They want to know, Bernie, can you recommend 30 or 40 investors from South Africa for my project?
Absolutely, no problem. Call 1-800-Visa-Law. Actually, that is my telephone number, by the way. But yeah, there's a lot of interest from South Africa. South Africa, sadly, is going through considerable turmoil. There's a lot of high net worth folks there, and simple bottom line is, yes, we do get a lot of inquiries, but as I mentioned earlier, the demand right now, if you have to look at the top 5 or 6 countries, China just takes it away. Number 1, number 2, Korea, UK, Japan. We are seeing increase Mexico, Venezuela, Brazil, Middle East countries, Russia. Demand is all over the place. I've got Canadians, just pretty much every nationality. This program is becoming increasingly popular, such that, very interestingly, for the first time, I think we're going to have a backlog next year, and this worries me because there's only 10,000 visas.
Yeah, let's get into that. What happens if we hit that number?
Well, the quotas are limited by country. So the nation that's going to be most impacted by this is China.
Yeah.
Now, again, I'm going to start with the positive, the eternal Pollyanna Bernie.
Optimist.
Optimist. I think Congress is going to jump in. Even if we do not get comprehensive immigration reform, I think we'll get standalone support. I think the Leahy bill has got a good chance of going through on its own. And what this does is it removes derivatives from the count. So what this effectively means, it more than doubles the number of visas available. So that's the optimistic, Bernie, that Congress will do the right thing. Note, in terms of the extension, and I'll mention it again, the program, the Regional Center program, expires September 30th, 2015. That's less than 2 years away. So, did I say 2013? 2015.
Yes.
So less than 2 years from now, the Regional Center program expires. Now, we had bipartisan support last time for the extension. So this is not a Republican-Democrat issue. I think we have strong support from the R's and the D's and the president. So I see a good chance that we will see Congress do the right thing.
Is that granted permanence or yet extended again for another 3 years?
It'll do several things. One is it make the Regional Center program permanent. Number 2, it would increase the number of visas by instead of husband, wife, and child each taking a visa, that would just be a count of 1. So it'd increase by over 200% because the majority of immigrants are in fact married with kids. So this would be a huge benefit for the program. And by the way, it may also increase the amount for the minimum of investment. There's talk of a CPI adjustment. Some people feel $500,000 is cheap. So don't be surprised. The Australian program is what, 4-5 million. The Canadian program, 800,000. America relatively cheap at 500,000 in the Regional Center program.
They get a discount.
They get a discount, and they get other major benefits such as tuition, in-state tuition rebates, which again is a big driver.
Now, there has been an overwhelming number of regional center approvals in the past few months, and what impact will this have on the program? What challenges do these regional centers face, and how do you think they can overcome those challenges?
Well, I'm going to be completely biased in answering that question. You really do have to have a good team. Getting your regional center approved is kind of like graduating from college. It doesn't guarantee a good career. You really need to put a team together. And again, being self-serving, you have to have competent advisors. You need a good immigration lawyer. You need to work with appropriate agents. You need to work with, so you've got to market the projects. And of course, you have to identify high quality projects. High quality projects, and by that I mean projects which are both going to be job creating and ensure the return of the money. The big deal is just focus on making sure that that investor gets their money back. That's what people want. They're not expecting huge returns, but they want to get their green card, they want to get their money back. And so we have a lot of new actors in the arena. If I actually had to do the math on it, 10,000 visas, 350 plus regional centers, some of these regional centers with multiple projects, projects getting bigger and bigger. I'm starting to say the math just doesn't work out. There's a lot of these regional centers that are not going to get off the ground, and the winners are going to be those who have the best teams, in my opinion. It's kind of like anything, build the best team. Those regional centers that have substantial backing, substantial financial support, lots of experience in the industry, and of course focused in the correct industries. Those folks who are promoting projects that do not have collateral are going to find it more difficult to market those because the investor has become more sophisticated.
All right, Bernie, I'm going to stop you right there. We need to pause for another word from our sponsor.
The following presentation was made possible by the Alltech Media Group, a Southern California multimedia company providing exponential branding and marketing services to all their clients. The Alltech Media Group understands the value of the 3W strategy, providing their clients proven, trackable results. Let us make it easy for you to grow your business. Visit alltechmedia.com.
Welcome back.
Well, thank you.
Now, with all these new regional centers being created, what does it say about the EB5 program, and how will it affect the individual investor?
Well, I think from an individual investor's perspective, there's going to be more choice. Mm-hmm. The question is, you've got a lot of new players, which quite frankly means you have a lot of amateurs in the business, people who are just getting into the business. But at the end of the day, the key is perhaps not even so much to look at the regional center. People get confused. It's not so much the regional center, it's the project. Mm-hmm. So the question is, you could have a regional center with an established track record that has 3 great projects, and project number 4 is terrible. So really what you've got to do is kick the tires on that particular project. You have to ask yourself, what is the collateral? What is the job count? You do need to use specialists. You need to have top immigration counsel, top financial counsel to analyze the private placement memorandum, the offering documents, and to understand exactly what risk that investor will have from an immigration and from a financial point of view.
We have another question from our viewer. Bernie, can you describe what a good regional center team would consist of?
Absolutely. Firstly, let's assume that you're going into the area of assisted living, which again is a hot product right now. There are many in this arena which focus specifically in this area. The first question I would ask is, what sort of experience does the developer have in terms of the assisted living industry? Now, we know that the baby boomers, my generation, there's more of us, and we're getting older. I'm hoping to secure my little place in one of these. No, stop being silly. But the simple bottom line is, what are the projections? How much money does that developer have of their own money in that particular project? How much money is being borrowed from the bank? The banks inevitably are going to be in first place. So the analysis really depends on using, quite frankly, common sense. Is this a good business? We know the statistics on most businesses. The failure rate is relatively high for certain types of businesses. And one of the things that's very, very important in the EB5 program is that you have two phases. You have the conditional green card, the 526, and then 2 years later, you have to file the 829, and that investment has to be sustained all the way to the end. So at the end of the day, and this is now 3.5, 4 years down the road, have those jobs been created? Is the economic activity there that was projected in terms of the job creation? Because the Immigration Service is asking that $1 million question. Show me right up front, show me the money, but at the end, show me the jobs.
And they're permanent jobs.
And they've got to be permanent jobs, although once the green card is issued and 5 years later, at that point, the money can in fact be paid back. And the idea is that the jobs would have lasted at least through to that period of time, several years.
Now, we've heard a lot about these huge fees being paid by these Chinese immigration brokers. How will this increase in regional centers? How will it affect the regional center fees?
Well, you know, most projects, everybody, so it's 500,000. It's not 500,000. There is always an administrative fee that can run anywhere from $40,000 to $50,000. Sometimes a little bit more. You know, there are a lot of agents, particularly in China, now in Vietnam, other parts of the world. I have quite a lot of experience working with the Chinese agents, and I think that many of them have got a bad rap. You know, you can talk about realtors. You know, would the real estate market work as effectively without realtors? They play a very, very important role. And the agents, the bigger agents that I've worked with, find them incredibly knowledgeable, incredibly careful. They're doing the due diligence. In many respects, they are at the front line. The regional center is sitting here in the United States, the project developer, but these are the folks that have to face the customers on a day-to-day basis. And if they don't get the green card approved, and if they don't get the money back, they're the folks who stand to have a brick thrown through their window. And no, I've heard that exact phrase. So I've found a lot of the agents very concerned about their reputation. These are licensed, registered brokers in China. Yes, they are collecting a decent fee, but if you will see the kind of program that they're putting on, the marketing program, the educational program, I'm going to say they're the grease that keeps the wheel moving in this program.
How do you feel about them disclosing fees to the investors?
You know, transparency is key. That's what the SEC wants. That's what we need in the program. If I sell my house for a good price, I don't have a problem with that agent collecting a 5 or 6% fee. I'm going to say most of the time they've earned it. They spent a lot of time, and I'm not having a problem with the agent collecting a fee, but I do think it should be disclosed so everything is above board, and that I think is critical.
Now, another question from one of our viewers, Bernie. Will the increase in regional centers affect the broker fees higher or lower?
Well, what's happened right now is that because there are so many regional centers and so many new projects coming on the market, the folks who are actually holding the cards right now are the brokers, the agents in China. They get to pick and choose, and they are being very, very diligent in terms of choosing the right projects. They have become much more sophisticated. So what does this mean for the market? Well, if you're selling bad product, you're not going to be doing very well. So I think there is now pressure on the market. This is what capitalism is. We have competition, and at the end of the day, if you've got bad product, you're not going to sell it, or you're not going to sell it in China where the market is sophisticated. Maybe you can try somewhere else, but the agents are very careful today in terms of which projects they choose. And I think that this increase, this surge of popularity, it's kind of like having a whole bunch of new restaurants. If they don't have good food, they're not going to be around 6 months from now.
Do you think the Chicago case helped make these agents a little more doing their due diligence? And it was heavily promoted in China, and you got to, you know, see why why did they not see that this was a bad project? Because it was so clear that it was from so many perspectives.
It's Monday morning quarterbacking. Wisdom is 20. Hindsight is 20/20 vision. The simple reality is, yes, all the indicators were there, and everybody missed it. I think there was a certain level of excitement, a certain level of hype.
Yeah, because it was a huge, huge project, promising so many things.
A huge project, and let's just put it this way. I think there was a lot of naivety, and let's use the old phrase, it's greed at the end of the day, but it's been a wake-up call. It really has, and I think it's in many ways a turning point for the program. So the agents now, those agents that did sell the product, they took a beating because at the end of the day, they got the pressure. So I think people are a whole lot more careful right now, and that's why I say silver lining, good for the program.
Now, what are some of the biggest hurdles that you face with the adjudication process, and how do you think that it can be improved?
Our biggest problem is delays in adjudication, without a doubt. I mean, it's kind of scary. If you look at the official California Service Center processing time, which is on the website, you're looking at March 16, 2012 for the May 30th report. Now, if you do your math, and I'm not that good at math, but lawyer's plight, but you're looking at 16 months for adjudication. Now, that's just not reasonable.
No.
And add to that the mandatory request for evidence, RFE. It seems like every case has to get an RFE. The bottom line is 18, 19 months. But again, being the Pollyanna character that I am, I think that CIS has done a lot in terms of clarifying the adjudications process. We are seeing additional resources being added to the adjudications. So I'm somewhat optimistic that we're going to see a substantial improvement. I hope to see adjudications come down to 6 months or less. And certainly we're seeing improvements in terms of processing of 924s. There's been a rash, that's the regional center applications. I just got another approval last week. They are starting to come through, and I'm prepared to predict that we'll see regional center approvals within 6 to 12 months, and I'm prepared to predict that we're going to see adjudications within 6 to 8 months as well. So rest of 2013, we're still doing a bit of a cleanup job, but by early 2014, I think we're going to see a fairly smooth program with both Washington, D.C. adjudications, and even though the CSC was supposed to slow down on adjudications, I think we'll see them continue to be active for some time. So
you don't think the flooding of the projects and the regional centers are going to further congest the petitioning process?
Well, I think that the congestion was caused to a large degree by lack of clarity. This tenant occupancy issue popped up, and I don't think the adjudicators knew what to do. Now there is some idea, and by the way, I'm not supporting the current narrow interpretation. I think, quite frankly, it's really unfair that regional centers and projects relied on their approval notices that said tenant occupancy methodology, the statute's clear, the regulations are clear, reasonable methodologies, but in reality, very few projects that did not have approvals prior to May 30th are getting approved. And this is an uphill battle for a lot of people, but at least for those people who are starting at this time, there's clarity as to what works and what doesn't.
Now, the move from EB5's headquarters from California to Washington, do you think that will help the program? What are your thoughts on that move?
Time will tell. They're hiring, more high-level adjudicators, GS14s, more economists, but there is a learning curve. And my understanding is that an EB5 adjudicator takes 4 to 6 months before they really get up and running on understanding this program. So is the move good? Well, hopefully, if headquarters takes an interest to make sure that cases are adjudicated timely and accurately, but quite frankly, getting, I don't know what's the right word, but setting aside the 50 or 60 experienced examiners that we have, I'm not sure how that enhances efficiency in adjudication. I think that some training issues need to be dealt with, but getting rid of the experienced examiners and having to train a whole new a group of examiners, that may not be too helpful in the short term.
Now, what are your feelings regarding Mayorkas's nomination to Deputy Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, and why is this so controversial?
Well, we've seen how Congress works or doesn't work. I was the president of the American Immigration Lawyers and spent a lot of time on the Hill up until a year or two ago, and I was disappointed. The old bipartisan Teddy Kennedy and Strom Thurmond, exact opposites working together in the national interest, is something that I haven't seen. It's quite depressing, actually, that, whatever position the D's are going to take is opposite to the R's and the R's against the D. Where is this national unity? Where is the focus of what's good for the nation? And we're not seeing that. And that's somewhat problematic. And that plays into the Mayorkas nomination. Now, Mayorkas is, of course, a local here from Southern California. We know him very well from when he was a partner at O'Malveny, when he was U.S. Attorney here. This is a tough prosecutor. Don't mess with him. He's a smart man. He's a tough man. He's a knowledgeable, and he's shown great interest in this program. And for some reason, he is now being skewered because he's been doing his job, and his job as director of CIS is to make sure that decisions are done correctly. He appoints the Administrative Appeals Office, and the specific case which is being raised by the Inspector General, what he did, it relates to a redemption clause. Now, redemption clauses have been a huge headache. CIS, in my opinion, has kind of got this wrong. In any project where there is even the slightest indication that the people are going to get their money back, CIS is denying it. I understand it has to be at risk to create jobs. That's the law. That's the interpretation. But the idea that the investor has to lose all their money is quite frankly ridiculous. And Mayorkas, exactly at the time this issue was being raised, and fortunately it's clarified in the May 30th memo, had come out with the correct decision. It just so happens that the specific project did involve Hillary Clinton's brother. So, there's a lot of finger pointing. I'm very optimistic that Mayorkas is the type of person who does the right thing. I happen to know him. I have had the privilege of meeting with him. He's tough. He's smart. Don't mess with him. He follows the law. And I think this is politics as usual, quite frankly.
Okay. Now, what are some other, we've covered a lot of topics, but what are some other hot topics in EB5 that you can talk about?
Oh, flavor of the week. There's always a flavor of the week in this particular program. I'd mentioned the redemption issue that seems to be sort of coming back to life. The idea that, if you give any assurance of a return, then we're going to deny your EB5. But many of the issues that were bothering bridge loan issues, for example, have been clarified in the memo. The tenant occupancy issue, not that we like the interpretations, but at least have been clarified. So what are the hot issues? The age-out issue, which we spoke about, I'm very concerned. And let me give a bottom line interpretation for this age-out issue, because there's a lot of fear in China right now. And here's the bottom line. If Congress does not act to increase the numbers, we can be very sure that the quota will be hit next year. Yeah. Now, if the quota is hit and we have a wait line of 6 months or 10 months, about the time that the petition takes to adjudicate, it's not going to be too serious. But if we have wait times of 2 years or more, and the adjudication is 6 to 12 months, we are going to have age outs. And what that means is kids are going to turn 21 and not be included in the immigrant application. So this sounds like a plug for a sophisticated lawyer, but the simple bottom line is you do need to understand the Child Status Protection Act, what the impact will be, and be able to read the tea leaves in terms of what sort of wait line we're going to have, and how will that impact in a situation where we have retrogression. It's another whole crazy concept where the numbers were available at the time of approval and then subsequently they go back. Visa numbers and quota numbers, we should have a separate discussion on that. We could do another 2 hours on...
Maybe we'll have you back.
Oh, I'd be thrilled. Thank you.
For those watching today, if you have any questions for Bernie, please text them now. We're limited on time, so if you can get the question in as soon as possible, we would appreciate it. Now, Bernie, let's continue our discussion and hope we get some more of your questions. Where do you see the program heading in 5 years?
Oh, milk and honey. I'm again, for the fifth time, extremely optimistic.
I see that.
Let's look at this program. It brings capital and it brings jobs. Now, what is wrong with a program? We admit almost 1 million immigrants a year to the United States. The overwhelming majority of those are based on family immigration. And I'm all for family reunification. I think that's wonderful. But what about the innovators? What about the investors? What about the people who bring huge value in terms of job creation, huge value in terms of capital, allowing for, and I keep saying assisted living, hey, we've got to, look after what I'm going to call my generation, the baby boomers. Got to put us somewhere. So these are good things. Creating jobs, bringing capital to America is without a doubt. So my hope is that the current 10,000 goes to 20,000, and we're going to continue to see billions of dollars and thousands of jobs created through this wonderful program.
Now, what is the best piece of advice you can give investors, developers, and regional centers?
Let's see if I can hit that with one shot. It's kind of like getting married and starting a family. Do your due diligence and choose carefully. I got very lucky. I married a very smart lady with a PhD, and she's a great mom, and she's also an MBA, so she helps me run the business. So it's about building good teams. And the same as being well married, behind every successful male at least is a smart female. And I have to give credit to my wife, Shelley, who keeps me on my toes and helps me build a strong team. So the same for regional centers, build a good team. Have good advisors, good marketing people, good project. For investors, do your due diligence, and let me keep saying that, do due diligence on your due diligence people.
Yes.
So,
That's
I can't pronounce that enough. My little Peter Piper picked a pickled pepper. Do due diligence on your due diligence people again and again, and that's going to help you enormously as an investor. Build your team. I'm obviously self-promoting when say have a good attorney, have a good securities advisor, have good marketing people, be transparent, build your reputation. If you're a developer, focus on giving that money back at the end of the 5 years, which means being successful. There's nothing like doing an honest deal in terms of getting repeat customers and referrals. You can always advertise, but nothing like having a happy customer, and that would be the good advice that I would give for developers, for regional centers, and folks involved in projects.
Now, what about other immigration attorneys? What kind of advice would you give them?
Well, I think that there's enormous opportunity for immigration attorneys. My association, the American Immigration Lawyers, has 13,000 members. Many of them have interest in this arena. I think that being able to advise your client in the EB5 area is part of providing a full service. By the way, I'll give a little bit of a plug. I'm actually the chair of the American Immigration Lawyers Conference, January 24 in the Cayman Islands. So come along and learn all about investor visas and EB5 and have some fun. So simple bottom line is a huge surge of interest. I did a presentation at our annual conference in San Francisco. There must have been 1,500 lawyers in the audience. Yeah, so and I'm doing another presentation in New York, September 3, at the Practicing Law Institute. So a lot of interest by attorneys, a lot of scope, a lot of work needs to be done, both in terms of registering regional centers, amending regional centers, which is now permissible in terms of the May 30th memo, representing individual clients to make sure that their cases are strongly presented, strategizing appropriately. There's huge scope for competent immigration attorneys.
Now, we have one more question from a viewer, and that is, what are the best markets for regional center projects?
Well, we've kind of touched on that. China is without a doubt the 800-pound gorilla. Never sure if it's 800 or 900 pounds. But the bottom line is China is the market right now, just based on the statistics. Vietnam coming up as a strong market. Mexico, without a doubt, strong interest. South America, Brazil, Venezuela, Middle East. But, you know, have a good project is the bottom line. Yeah. You'll almost find the good project will sell itself. Word will spread. Good project meaning good job creation counts, number one. And number two, a decent likelihood that the business will be successful and that the money will be returned.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Bernie.
Amy, an absolute pleasure. I hope to be back again sometime soon.
All right. Wolfsdorf Immigration Law Group is a full-service immigration law firm helping their clients navigate through complex immigration matters, including but not limited to EB5. We hope you have found this webcast helpful. Be sure to tune in September 11th when our guest will be securities attorney Michael Homeyer. We'd like to thank all of our viewers and those who participated in our live webcast, along with today's program sponsor, the Alltech Media Group. I'm Amy Rios, and I want to thank you for watching EB5 Investment Reports Dialogue Series.
The following presentation was made possible by the Alltech Media Group, a Southern California multimedia company providing exponential branding and marketing services to all their clients. The Alltech Media Group understands the value of the 3W strategy, providing their clients proven, trackable results. Let us make it easy for you to grow your business. Visit alltechmedia.com.